it's Sharon Luska here from My Crafty Greetings, and we are doing a Scrappy Tails video today. I'm sorry this didn't get up sooner. I've been having some technical difficulties. Something ate my project. So this is a new project, but I know that this is something that you all will appreciate, and some of you have been waiting for. With the Tropical Leaves Assortment die set, I am going to be doing a series of sympathy cards, and this set is absolutely fantastic for sympathy cards. I know on first view, especially in these bright greens, maybe not so much, but I'm gonna show you how. So this green, previously I thought was an extremely ugly green, probably not even worthy of my shelf, but you're gonna see how this green ends up being exactly what we need for a sympathy card. Now I have a piece of Neenah Solar White and I have a piece of Neenah specialty card stock, and it has some very fine kind of stripes in it, and this brings up the richness of a card. So if you're going to combine two different whites, try and use them from the same company, or get in some good light and make sure that you can see that they are the right tone. I've been thinking recently that it would be a good idea to do a video of the right white so that you can understand how whites can impact your project. But anyways, oh, and there's me trying to do it on the clear stamp setting for this. I just flipped that around. And I'm also using one of those mats that I made with the press and seal. It's my own sticky mat, and I'm just double checking my alignment here. The sticky mat's great because it keeps everything from sliding around and also keeps my project from having marks on the back. So, and with expensive paper, you don't want to lose that. This is the sticky mat that I made with the Cricut placement vinyl. I can't remember what it's called. I'll link it in the thing below. But these are all pre-glued with little dots of Tombow Mono Multi adhesive, and I've already let them dry, and you can see how easily that they drop into place. And all I'm doing is just allowing these to just slightly overlap. I don't want a lot of overlapping, but I also don't want a lot of open spaces here. Now you can use whatever leaves you have for this style of card, and this particular layout of card is fabulous for doing sympathy cards. And it's just basically a peekaboo window in the middle of your card. You can do them any dimensions for the top and bottom that you want. You're going to want to size the gap that's available based on what it is that you're using to fill in the gap. So the gap is a little bit larger with these leaves because they're a bit bigger leaves. This is a 5x7 card. I'm going to save the extra glued up leaves on a piece of what is that, label backer paper. And so I'm also going to put some of my foam packing sheets on the back here to pop these little panels up. So you can see I used the expensive stripy paper, just a small amount on the top and bottom, and saved the paper from being the background behind the leaves because it doesn't really matter and nobody's going to notice there. So if you wanted to use the stripy paper behind the palm fronds there, you could. Look at me, I feel like I'm in school again with a pencil, an eraser, and a ruler. So Tombow Mono Multi on the packing foam, and I'm just going to pop these into place, and you can see right out of the gate we have a very simple, very easy, straightforward pattern to put together. This will not fail you for a sympathy card, and like I said, you can use anything that you've got. I particularly love Sabrina's leaves though. They're gorgeous, and they do the job. Even with an ugly green, they do an excellent job of making a pretty card. So I'm going to put some silver bands on here, and once we trim them off, we're going to bling this up a little bit. Yes, I said bling. As I'm looking at some of the commercial cards, I'm noticing that they are really stepping up their game using ribbon and little bits of glitz. Thoughtful kind of ingredients that they've added to their cards commercially that we've always been kind of standoffish about adding to ours. And I have to tell you, the appropriate bling on these cards, using something that's got just a subtle iridescence, a little bit of clear, even if it's you know, your regular diamond colored rhinestone, it just brings it up another level. And, you know, try it on your next card and see if I'm right. See if you agree. Now, this card, a thinking of you card. Now this could be a masculine card. You can stamp whatever you want. I'm doing thinking of you, but I'm also considering the two colors of ink here. I've got a smoke gray by Versafine, and then I also have crumb cake by Stampin' Up. And yes, I do have Stampin' Up colors. They stamp awesome. I wanted to kind of eyeball and see which one I liked better, and I think that the brown was my winner for this. And I have two different size circles here too, and I ended up picking the larger circle, just felt it was better for what I was making. Now I have 3 different tones of craft cardstock here. One actually is a backer from something that I bought, but I wanted different tones of craft cardstock, and I'm even going to make this even more differently toned. So starting a score line 1/4 inch in, and then I'm moving it over and scoring a second time, an 1/8 inch from there. I'm counting 4 slots and then popping down another score line, and the next slot over I'm scoring again. I'm starting at the right hand side of my paper. This is a 5x7 paper. I'm starting at the right hand side, and I'll tell you why. As you score your sheet, it starts to break down the fibers and the sheet will start to curl just like that. And it makes it much harder to hold it into the corner and keep it straight when that happens. So start from your right hand side and score towards the left. So we're going to add a little ink blending to this because we want to make this paper look nice and rich in the background. If I had used a dome blender, the dome blender would have had the stripes not pick up as much ink, so they're going to be more dramatic. This was fine for me here. One of the things too that I'm going to tell you is if you're using a big blender brush, just tap off the one side and then start with that side and rock your brush forward to add your ink down. That will help you avoid marks. And you can see on my paper there, I only have the one side of the brush dabbed, not the other. I'm going to pick out some string here. I've got some twine, different twines and things like that, and I'm intending on making some tassels. And so I've got a few different pieces here, and I chose this natural jute. Now fold it in half, give yourself a good length, and then pop the loop through the 2 centers here. And then once you pull that, you see how it leaves you a loop at the end? Cut this loose little piece off, cut your loop in half, and then what you want to do is you want to untwist the fibers of that twine. And once you untwist the fibers of the 2 pieces, you will have very cool tassels, just like that. Now I'm going to add a little glue to make sure that somebody doesn't accidentally pull them through if they're fussing with them, but I think if they're pulling at my card, I'll probably give them a knuckle sandwich. Oh, you didn't hear me say that. So here is my leaf arrangement. You know what it looks like to glue leaves down, and I'm using my bottle that I got off of Amazon, and that is art glitter glue in there. So here is another trick. My twine is a little bit on the thicker side, and we do not want to make this sentiment stick up so high that it can't go through the mail. So I've actually cut pieces that are going to lay down and look like loops. And we're going to put a little foam tape, and it will hide all nicely and neatly under here because I don't have 2 and 3 layers of twine over top of each other. And you can see the one on the very left hand side there, I'm going to pick that one up and I'm going to trim the excess off of that before I adhere it down so that it also does not end up with difficulty from this twine. And part of it too is this twine's got a bend to it because of the stick that I put it on. If you don't like the bend in your ribbon or twine, just give it a little spray with water, let it dry, and you're good to go. So you can see how I cut the pieces that overlap from that piece of twine, just adding a little bit of glue to the 2 ends and a little bit of glue to these pieces here, just to kind of hold this all in place so that it doesn't pull through. And I'm checking to make sure that it's all going to be hidden behind my thinking of you. And now that I'm looking at it, I've decided to add some foam tape in that center kind of portion there to help support my sentiment over top of that twine. And there we see that it's all covered up. I'll pick off the backer sheets from my foam tape. I never know what those are called. The film? What is that called? Does anybody know what that stuff's called that's attached to the foam tape? I have no idea. The non-sticky bits. So I'm just going to put a little pressure on that to hold everything together. And then we're also going to add some sequins, brown sequins, and I'm going to put them in a little cluster of 3. I think we often forget that you can do a berry style arrangement of rhinestones, of sequins, of little bits and bobs, and that's another cool presentation for how we can attach things to cards. And it's okay to mix singles and triples. That looks good too. You can see it would make a great happy birthday card for a guy, but it also makes a great thinking of you card. And if we change that sentiment to with sympathy, it would be great sympathy card. So here's another one that is going to be very simple, very straightforward, and highly dramatic to do. This is all just layers of cardstock. I'm using what they call a crew white. So if you are going to be doing yourself a batch of sympathy cards, try and find some better quality papers. Pay a little bit more for those papers, and then just use them wisely. Now what I'm doing here is marking where my piece is going to go so that I can make sure that I put my sentiment in exactly the perfect spot. And I'm just test driving this on a piece of scrap paper to make sure that it's going to show up right, that it doesn't have any fuzzies on it, that it's not going to malfunction. And to keep this from bleeding in this linen texture paper, add yourself on a little bit of score powder, or I think it's embossing buddy or whatever it is, whatever powder that you use when you're embossing. Put some of that on the paper, and that will keep it from wicking out into the paper and giving you a feathered look of stamping. Now, since I've got that stamp loaded up, I'm going to do some extras. That was my point there. And you can see how I've stolen one of my layers out of the center of that piece of paper. This paper specifically came from an art store, so it was $1 for an 8.5 by 11 sheet, and my cheap crafter side does not allow me to just hide a whole entire sheet under there. This just about killed me. Now, if you're going to be doing a slim border, keep your adhesive to the center of your piece, and that will allow you to position your paper without it catching unexpectedly on you. It allows you to slide it around. That's a great tip. So I'm just putting some ATG, and then I eyeball where this is going to land so I know what it's going to look like. Stuck in my brain, and then I can replicate that because I just saw what the border should look like. I have a couple scrap pieces of paper here, and this is another linen piece of paper, and I'm just popping it up with 2 pieces of 110 cardstock on top of the white one. It's nice to have that little shadow there. It always reminds me of like a matting that they do around expensive art. That's a great way to bring extra drama and elegance to a card that you're making. So I'm just adding some glue onto the base piece that I'm popping this one up with. If you're adding extra layers, put the glue on the piece that's on the bottom and then put your expensive piece over top of it. That will help from you getting glue all over your foiled papers because the glue will be on the piece that's laying down, not on the piece that it's handling. So I've got these on, and you can see how they're just kind of shelving a little bit off of that. Adds great elegance. Now this piece I did last because of course it's got my stamping on it, and I do not want to have to cut this and redo it. So now that I've got it in place, I put my pretty already laid out piece on some paper towel to make sure it didn't get any marks on it. I'm checking the borders and lining this up, and you can just see whether you do a 5x7 card or note card size, adding some layers with some gold and white. You can pick any color, blue or gray, whatever you want, silver. Just do a bunch of declining layer sizes that are a little bit smaller one than the other. Add a couple focal points on it, and you're away to the races. So I wanted to show you quickly too the project that I was doing before this all went kablooey. I'm working on a 3D parrot house with the dies from Scrappy Tails, and my video got corrupted, so I'm trying to get that pulled back together. So this was not what I was intending to post today, but it was going to be a faster video for me to pull together. So here we have those palm fronds. I love these. These are exclusively with Sabrina, these short palm fronds, and you're going to see what this does. It's just excellent. Stick these onto a sticky mat so that they're mostly hanging off, and what you're going to do is just put 3 dots along each of those skinny leaves. That's all you need to stick these down. And then you're gonna let them dry. And once they're dry, you can flip them back over, and they are going to stick like nobody's business to your project. Now, if you think of it, you can stick it on your black paper before you do this, but then you're gonna have to peel all those little backs off, and I thought this was just easier. So I'm just lining these up here. You're going to put 1/3 of the fronds off of each side, and this is for a 5.5 by 7. And then once you get the 2 outside ones lined up, just take the second one in from each side and have the fronds kind of overlap to the center of each palm, and then that way all of these leaves will line up perfectly. And I love how this looks. Now we're going to cut the stems off. I cut the stems off, I didn't quite like that, so I pushed it back into my trimmer and I'm cutting it right to the bottom of the palm. So no stems, just those little palm leaf hearts. And I like to play with my projects before I decide what I'm doing, and I put this piece of white paper in and thought, nah, I have a better idea. So I have Deepest Sympathy already stamped out in an ovoid kind of rectangle shape here. I took another black piece, cut it in half, black die cut it in half, and we're just gonna shelf it off either side. And the nice thing about that shape is it looks perfect. Here's a bit of black hemp string. I have some in a thin weight and a thick weight, and I like to hold it up to my project and see how it makes out against the line thickness of the other things that are part of the project. And I decided that this thinner weight was going to be a better match to what I was doing here already. Now, of course, they like to tie these up nice and tight, and I swear I'm like a cat when it comes to this stuff. Once I get in it, I get so crazy and have to rip at it and pull it apart. Usually what I do is I wind it into a ball and then slip the ball inside a Ziploc bag and have the end just coming out the top corner of the Ziploc bag, and I never ever have to undo tangled twine, threads, whatever it is again. This I haven't done yet. So we're going to do a cool attaching technique here. Put your folded end through the front of your project and then loop your tails back through that folded end. Now I'm not pulling this because it'll rip, but you just want to keep adjusting your string till it gets through. We are going to reinforce this because if we just put the strings back behind here, it is going to show through that paper. So this is some 110 card stock. I'm going to attach that on the back. I'm also going to put a few pieces on my little sentiment strip here, 2 pieces of 110 Neenah, and we're going to make sure that it falls in between the holes with the string coming out. So that's going to keep it from digging into your project. Add some ATG and we'll sit it in place. Once we get it tacked down, we can flip this over. Actually, we're not going to flip it over. We're going to take a second piece of 110 paper and we're going to cut some notches out. And those notches will be where we will flip our string back around, and we're going to hide that string in that little channel that we've made. And the reason that we're doing that is we don't want the paper to end up bent up and messed up. Where that string comes behind, it'll leave a big lump. It's going to look ugly. If we give it a spot to sit and rest, it's going to end up perfect. Couple bits of 2-sided tape, hold that in place, and then I'm going to put a little extra 2-sided tape over top to make sure it's nice and secured. I'm adding some foam packing sheet to the bottom of this, and this is going to give it some nice lift at the bottom, but the 2 layers of 110 paper are going to hold the top nice and firm. So that way then it's not going to end up a mess whether it gets mailed or whether you have it sitting for a little while before you actually need to use it. I'm going to put some mono multi on this, and then once we flip it over, I'll leave a tiny bit of reveal at the top here and allow the bottom to stick itself down. I've got a tiny strip of white that I'm going to attach, which I found looked the very best. And then this is from Diamond Dots, that diamond painting. I grabbed a few of these on sale. This is an iridescent white, and I'm just going to scatter these through the palm leaves. Now, if you've lasted this long through my video, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, I sure would love it if you would. If you would give me a thumbs up and let me know that this type of video is useful, that you appreciate it, that it they should recommend it to other people. That would be fantastic. And don't forget to leave me a comment. I do thoroughly enjoy those. Anything that you see here, I'll try and link it in my drop down box below. And certainly thank you so much to everyone who's used my links to shop at Scrappy Tails. Hopefully you see the value of this die set. I certainly do, and we'll have more videos coming your way using this particular die set. Thanks so much. Bye.